This story comes from Reddit user In the Labyrinth. We're going to call him Jim. Jim's dad had recently passed, and his mom wasn't really taking it that well after having been married for 63 loving years. She needed and appreciated Jim's support, and Jim was more than willing to go visit her and keep her company. But that night, it was getting late, so Jim said goodbye to his mom and headed out the door. His mom lives in the suburbs. Tiny lawns, plenty of neighbors, paved roads, and even though it's almost 11 p.m. when he leaves, the streets are still well lit by all the streetlights. These lights, however, only illuminate the road, and glancing across the street, the houses are cast in an eerie shadow. Even a safe, charming little neighborhood like his mom's can seem spooky and uninviting when cast in deep, late-night shadows. And Jim is spooked. Sliding into his car, he revs the engine, waves to his mom, who's standing in the doorway wrapped in a shawl. And Jim starts driving the car down the road and out of the neighborhood, and decides to take the back way home since it's a shorter drive. In hindsight, he says this may not have been a good idea. Jim lives a decent distance away, way out in the country, in an old farmhouse that he grew up in. His dad had left it in his name when he and Jim's mom had moved to a smaller place. Growing up, Jim's father had always told him, "Don't go out at night and beware the devils." He was a strong believer in anything and everything paranormal, a very superstitious man, and Jim always had to resist the urge to laugh at his words. But he knew he meant well. Driving down these dark country roads, there are no streetlights, and the paved road is cracked and full of potholes. The fields on either side of the road are empty, just blank stretches of overgrown grass and untended shrubbery. One might even see a deer or two in those fields, but not tonight. The moon offers little light as the sky rolls with dark, threatening clouds, ready to unleash a storm at any moment. And sure enough, a few moments later, Jim can hear the low grumble of thunder. No rain just yet, much to Jim's relief. He hates driving at night, and he hates driving in the rain. And he knows putting those two things together usually doesn't end well. Surrounded by the rolling thunder, Jim starts to feel anxious. He can't quite explain it. He just feels shaken up. But he just chalks it up to the dark night, the impending rain, and reading way too many ghost stories and legends. Tonight is a perfect reflection of the mood of those stories, which he reads almost obsessively, slowing down a bit as he attempts to find a station that'll come in clearly. But nothing. Weird. There's a broadcasting tower right near the road that he's on, so it usually comes in perfectly, clear as day. But still, nothing. And the white noise and the static of the blank stations do nothing to appease Jim's anxiety. And he grips the steering wheel tightly as more thunder booms through the sky. More than a little annoyed, he shuts off the radio and glances down at his dashboard. He's almost out of gas. Ah, crap, Jim says, and he starts searching for a gas station. As he scans the side of the road, he notices from the corner of his eye 2 figures walking along the shadows on the edge of the road. They're walking slowly. One turned around, walking backwards, with his or her thumb sticking out. And Jim feels compelled to pull over and offer them a ride. And he finds his hands turning the wheel slightly. But he pulls back, realizing how stupid it would be for him to let 2 random strangers into his car in the middle of the night on a backcountry road. So Jim speeds up and passes them, trying not to look at them. Though as he does, he feels oddly intrigued by them. But he quickly gets his focus back on the road ahead. It starts drizzling now, dropping his mood another level or 2. And along with the rain, the thunder seems to be getting louder and closer as the storm moves in. Seconds after passing the hitchhikers, Jim gives in to his compulsion to look at the two figures as he steals a glance in his rearview mirror. It seems as if they're walking faster, but Jim figures that has to be his imagination, because how would he be able to tell if they're walking faster with it being so dark and rainy? Looking back at the road in front of him, he almost misses a sign that alerts him to an upcoming gas station. A sigh of relief passes over his lips as he slows down, keeping his eyes peeled for the station ahead. The two figures long gone from his mind. And soon after, he pulls into the gas station slowly as the rain starts to pick up. The store is closed, but luckily they have 24-hour pump service. Jim shuts off his car and gets out, glancing over his shoulder, still unable to shake that uneasy feeling that is still building inside of him. And as he stands under the light of the overhang, he's trying to figure out how to work the pump, his mind not being able to focus on the simple task. And the rain picks up, heavier and louder, as Jim, despite his shaking hands, is finally able to get the nozzle into his car. Jim has a horrible feeling that his shaking is not due to the cold, wet air. Suddenly, the overhead lights of the gas station start flickering, a couple of them going out altogether. It feels as if the temperature has dropped 20 degrees in the last few seconds. As Jim glances around, an even deeper sinking feeling emerging in his stomach. Turning around, back toward the road, he sees exactly what he expects to see. The color drains from his face, and he breathes in a quick, sharp breath. There, across the street, the two figures from the road stand there, facing him. They start crossing the street, slowly but surely, as Jim fumbles with the gas nozzle, willing it to pump faster. And Jim's whole body is shaking now as he looks back up. The hitchhikers are now at the entrance to the gas station, and Jim's breathing is quick and shallow as he blindly shoves the nozzle back into its holder, not able to tear his eyes away from the figures. And as they walk closer, he becomes more frantic, even though now that they're walking into the light, he can see that they're just teenagers. They look ragged, frigid, and soaked from the rain. And Jim straightens up a bit, still terrified. But another compulsive feeling, similar to the one he experienced in the car, is bubbling, and he feels obligated to talk to them. They are now standing at the next pump. As Jim slides in his car, fumbles for his keys, and drops them in the footwell. Leaning down, he swipes them up and sits back up, a cold shock hitting him as he suddenly comes face to face with one of the teens. The kid has one hand on his window, knocking forcefully with the other. Jim rolls down the window slightly, but before he can open his mouth to speak, the teen speaks first, while the other one stands in the background, a bit of a grin on her pale face.
Can you give us a ride into town? We missed the bus and don't have a ride.
He speaks slowly, and something about his voice makes Jim shiver. Jim opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. Clearing his throat, Jim glances at the dashboard and then at the keys in his hand. I'm sorry, but I'm not going into town, he stutters, keeping his eyes down, avoiding the stare that he can feel coming through the window. And the teenager knocks louder, making Jim jump a little as he once again insists on a ride. And Jim says no to him once more and looks up, trying to seem intimidating, but a terrifying sight greets him. He looks the kid right in the eyes and gasps, his back pushing hard against the seat as he, in his panic, tries to move away. His eyes are blacker than night, endless black, no discernible pupils, and no whites showing at all. Pure black, deep, brooding, and surprisingly intriguing. But Jim's fear gets the better of him, and he quickly turns the key and the engine revs to life. And Jim thanks God it didn't stall. And the kid bangs on the window with a pale fist, screaming now for a ride. Jim puts the car in gear and goes screaming down the road. He had laughed at his father's superstitious warnings before, never taking them seriously. But now, as Jim heads down the road, he apologizes to his father again and again. After driving for a few more minutes, Jim pulls up into his driveway and up onto the lawn in front of his porch. At this point, he doesn't want to spend any more time outside than he already has. So he jumps from the car, leaving the car door open, runs inside, slams the door, and locks it. And he even goes so far as to put a chair in front of the door in case someone or something tries to get in. Sinking into the chair in front of the door, Jim shivers and cries uncontrollably, hiding his head in his hands as two dark figures stand there at the end of his driveway.